Hi everyone, this is Eric Berry. I am formerly with CodeFund. I wanted to give you all a demo of the CodeFund application. We decided as a team very early on to make this project open source and really have it be an example and a reference for ongoing development for us and for other developers, and we also felt that it was important to share this with everyone because there's not enough open source projects out there that really have a lot of traction. So at least that people can reference in the Ruby community. So I'm very excited to demo this with you. I'm a little bit nervous, have to admit, because I haven't looked at this in a few days. I did go through and obfuscate all of the data for our clients and for our publishers, so that we don't show any information that's not really something that we shouldn't be showing. You will see websites that did display our ads, and you will see other data as well. But for the most part, this data is obfuscated fairly well. Um, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out or comment or anything that you want. As I said, we are open source. You can find this code on GitHub at gitcoin.co/code_fund_ads. In here we have everything, including how to download the project, how to run it yourself, and some of the configurations that are needed, and the documentation as well. During this demo, I want to just show you exactly how it worked, especially from my point of view as the administrator of the project, and as the lead. I really had my hand in every aspect of this business, and so this tool is really an extension of the needs that have come about throughout the years. So I'm very excited to show you. So first off, let me just go ahead and log in. And no, so if you do need to reach me, that's my email right there. I can no longer be reached at eric@codefund.io. So this is just running on a local instance that I have. The first thing you'll notice is that this administrator dashboard has it used to have a beautiful embedded dashboard that was provided through the open source project Metabase. We host on Heroku, or hosted on Heroku. We had two databases. Now, our databases were very, very, very large. So it was important for us to minimize the transactional side of our database, so that the functionality of the application, the impressions that are being recorded, the clicks that are being recorded, the ads that are being displayed, all came very, very quickly. So we created a clone or a copy of the database that would stay in sync, and all of our reporting was done on top of that database. So it would never actually hit the live database. We also had our own instance of Metabase running on Heroku that would point to that, and we had extensive queries that really were pretty neat and powerful. So I am a little bit sad that you can't see this part of it, but for the most part, you should be able to see everything. So I'm going to start at the very beginning, and I guess talk about some of the tools that I used as an administrator. So aside from this dashboard, which did show all of the campaigns that were running at a time, and how they're working and all of that stuff, the way that our application was organized is we have what we call teams or organizations. And every company that we work with, we would build a new team for them. Sometimes there are companies that have multiple marketing departments or different products under the same umbrella. And so we really made these teams synonymous with budgets. So for example, if one company came in and said, I have, $5,000 for budget, we would set up a team for them. They would manage their budget through that team. To create a team, it's pretty simple. I think I'll run fairly quickly through a lot of this stuff. I don't think it needs too much describing. Here, we just give it a team name, optional URL. We can assign an account manager. And then finally, we have this flag for approving creatives. So For the most part, we didn't require creatives to be pre-approved, as long as there was a relationship that we had with the company. But when we're working with new advertisers, we did tend to, take a step back and say, okay, well, let's work with them. Let's make sure we trust them and trust that they won't put anything bad out without us knowing. So that's why that was there. It was more precautionary than anything else. Okay. Now, if we go back into here, we have our user accounts, and see all of these fake names here. There are some avatars, but so these fake names, and we have different types of users that display in here. I really actually never came into this section very much, although you could see I can masquerade as any one of these users without any issue, and that did work out very well, and I'll demo that in a little bit. When we brought new users into the platform, what we would do is I just fill out this form. I would decide or determine which team they would belong to, and then after that I would give them a role. We had 5 different roles in our platform. Not all of them were used all at the same time. The administrator, of course, is for anybody who's has total access to everything. We have an advertiser role, which is when the, of course, they're an advertiser, they have a budget, they want to be able to set up campaigns. The employer role that you're looking at is actually a legacy role from when we had a job board. The publisher role is assigned to all of those that have websites that are displaying our ads. And then finally, the account manager is one of those roles that would be assigned to an internal team member, and then that person would be responsible for account managing there. Oftentimes we would find some of our users had multiple roles. So for example, Ido, who's a good friend of mine who is with daily.dev, he was both an advertiser and a publisher, so he would have both roles. And I'll use his account as an example after this to kind of show you what that looks like. Finally, we have our audiences section here, and this is more of a reference. But the way we initially started CodeFund, and way back when it was Code Sponsor, is that we had keyword-based properties, and those keywords came from GitHub topics. So back in the Code Sponsor days, somebody would authenticate with GitHub, they would bring in the projects that they want to have sponsored, and then all of those topics that would come from GitHub would be applied to that property. So in here you can see that all these different tags, properties might have certain tags that belong to different audiences, but primarily we wanted to say these websites for the most part belong in one of these 8 audiences. And the reason we did this breakdown is because we simply just didn't have enough inventory, enough ads to display to justify a deeper targeting. We couldn't get the spend that was important enough to do that without kind of creating these generalized areas. So that's why we did that. I will go into one other section. There is this right here, which is the inbox. This is something that I started working on towards the end. And the inbox is where I'm able to, or anybody in our team is able to set up an auto forwarder on Gmail for their email account. So any outbound emails would also auto copy. And that auto copy would go to an intake on SendGrid, and then SendGrid would take that intake and it would send it over to our application. And then using the latest Rails technology, we would take in that email and determine if it was associated with any existing client or user in our platform externally from admins. And then if it found that it was the case, it would record the email, it would save it in here, would tie it to all those accounts, and then we could have a full thread of information going back and forth. So for example, if I look at this one right here, this email is actually, so like I said, I ran a script that would change the names. This is actually Ben. Hi, Ben. And Ben has an amazing newsletter that I follow. So this one actually came in, and even though this is a newsletter not very related to Ben's account, I still brought it in because it was tied to Ben. I mean, it came from his personal email. So you can see how that works. And then other sections in here, I will get to the campaign bundler, but I want to do that towards the end. So when you run campaigns with CodeFund, when you did run campaigns with CodeFund, it was a fairly simple process. Now, when we developed the product, we didn't really look at any other networks out there, and we did that very intentionally. We didn't want to be swayed or have our ideas skewed a little bit by seeing other people's innovation. And I guess there's pros and cons to that. The cons would be that maybe we're not building on top of, a lot of other people's lessons. The pros to that is that we could really approach this from a unique perspective of what is the best thing that we see, the best functionality and style of application that would work for the needs that we see exist. So because of that, we have what you see here. So on campaigns, I always start everybody off with the images. So in the images, you'll see, if I click on overview, you'll see all of these images in here. We have 4 basic image sizes. So all 4 of these, they all fit into one of 4 different categories. And if I click on upload images, it shows. So we have an icon. Now that icon is often displayed on, for example, displayed on Etherscan. Some other websites use the icon, but it wasn't used too much except for our blockchain properties. The small image, which is a 200 by 200, is just a square. Typically, it might show all the way down to a 50 by 50 canvas. So it was important to really just be a logo, not a lot of text or anything like that. Our most common one was this large, which is a 260 by 200. And then we had a wide, which this wide image was actually specifically used for the daily Chrome extension. So when we uploaded these images, we would have one of each at a minimum per creative. So on the images you could see we have, so for example right here we have a 512 by 320, we have a 200 by 200, and so on and so forth. So then in the creatives, I was able to build out, or anybody's able to build out these creatives, and there's some broken images there that you'll see. But for example, if I wanted to build a new creative, I just click the button there, and then you'll see that it comes to our creative builder form. So I'm just going to give it a name, example, and we have a status, so we can say that that is an active creative. And then down here we have a headline, body, and a call to action. So as we modify this information, you're going to start seeing this live update down here. Now the headline and the body is this section right here. So you have the bold, which is the headline. You have the normal text, which is the body. And then way down here at the bottom, you have this link, and that is the call to action. So for example, if I have something like that, and then we have go for it, you can see it's simply just updating it down there. And then we can choose different images. So for example, I choose that one, and let's say I wanted to use, the Gitcoin. Let's see. Let's do CodeFund Jobs, which is a blast from the past here. So if I go back to CodeFund and I go to CodeFund Jobs, and you'll see down here we have CodeFund Jobs, and now this image is ready to go, and I could save this as saying, okay, jobs. So let me go ahead and save that. Now that we save that, I have all of these different templates on how this ad might appear, and I can preview them all. I did want to show you though, this is actually this might work. Nope. Okay, so this is a better way to view them. If I come over here, you can go here, at least you could go here in the past by going to CodeFund or app.codefund.io/demo. In here it has all of the different ad templates. So for example, here's the top bar. Oop, looks like we have an authentication issue. Just got to refresh. It should work. Okay, so if we do bottom bar, you'll see the ad creative is down here. If we do horizontal, you can see it looks like that. And all of these ad templates were built within our JavaScript. So if you come over to the code, and if you're interested in seeing this, you can come in and look in app. It would be in JavaScript. It would be in source. Nope, not in source. It would be in advertisements. And then here are all of our different ads. So for example, if we look at that bottom bar, it has a JavaScript, and it has, oops, sorry. JavaScript. Bottom bar, it has a template, which is a mustache template. Then it has this theme right here, and this theme is going to include the dark and the light. And so that's how we managed flagging those back and forth. And we do have also the option of providing an unstyled theme. And the reason we did that was because we wanted to allow our our publishers to be able to, fix the styling a little bit just to make sure it matches their website. Having that native feel is really important. It also makes it so it's part of the trust that we wanted to show and allow with the audiences that we serviced. Okay, so that is how the creative process works. I'm going to go in and I'm going to switch over to organization. Oh, not 131, maybe 31. Let me just double check real quick. Yes, 31. So I did have to rename all of them just so that we didn't have too much private. We didn't want any private information being shown in this demo. So organization 31, I can actually rename this. I'm just going to rename this to daily. So daily.dev. Okay. So now we're in daily.dev, and daily is an amazing project that I love and support. If I click on a new tab, this is what daily is, and you can see this is where our ad used to appear right here, and that image right there is that 512 by 320. So it's a fantastic Chrome extension that I use all the time, happily paying customer. Anyway, so now that I'm in this daily organization, I wanted to show you some stuff. First, under here, this is the details, and again, this is another dashboard that we use for real-time data. If I click on members, you can see all of the different members that are in here. Each one of these members might have different permissions. Under the transactions, you can see all of the daily transactions that are inbound and outbound. So we have a job that runs on the back end, and then every day after midnight, it would go through and figure out exactly how much was spent for the previous day, and then it would create a transaction on this ledger, and that's what would take out money from their budget. So on the right, you'll see that here's their total balance, here's the total amount of credits that they've received, and here's the total amount of debits that they've had. Very transactional. If I reverse order this, you'll see that here's some of the here's some of the inbound payments, and that's how it worked. Not the cleanest system. This is one of those areas of focus we wanted to add more attention to, but it was just being a small team, dynamic team, we had to be able to focus on just the things that were the most important, and at the time this wasn't as important. We recently added this pixel tracking. The pixel tracking is really neat. We never got to the point where it was used, but it was pretty neat. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, let's say landing page, and that is worth 1 cent. And if I, oops, can't click cancel, I got to click save. All right, so landing page, and that might be worth 1 cent to Ito. So then we now have this pixel where he can place this script on any landing page that we might be sending traffic to. And then he's able to call this script right here, record conversion. And once that record conversion is called, it will go back and flag our system to say this impression was converted. And then we're able to gather a whole bunch of information around like, oh, that's interesting because it looks like most of your conversions happen in this region and most of your conversions happen, using this template, and most of them are coming, from these publishers, and like all this different information we're then able to gather, but in an ethical, privacy focused way, because we didn't have any identifiable information that we were sharing or even stored. So it was great. Down below, you could see we had the ability to add metadata to those conversions. So for example, if a client wanted to set a user ID or some identifier or session ID that they wanted to pass back to us so that they can cross-reference down the road, that was available. Okay. So let's go back in, and if we go back to the reporting section, the reporting section is pretty cool. This used to have a bit more, and in fact, there is some additional functionality that's hidden behind a feature flag that you're not seeing, which is essentially scheduling recurring reports to come out. At the end of the day, I just found it easier for me to just send reports manually, so I set it up like this. In this, I can set up a report saying a daily for June 2020, and I can choose the date range that I want. I can come down here and select all the campaigns that I want to include in that report. I can choose which email addresses that I'm sending them to. And I can also say, well, just use the selected campaign date ranges below, and that will go ahead and update that to match the beginning and ending date of these. Over here on the right, you'll see all of the campaign reports that have been generated before. What I was able to do is use DocRaptor, which is a great service, and DocRaptor, I had a webhook that anytime somebody would generate this report, it would create a web page, an HTML page, which I can show you here. I just got to look up the password real quick. Okay, I looked up the password and I clicked it, and it's right here. So this is what it looks like in HTML. And then DocRaptor would come in and convert this HTML to a PDF, and it worked out extremely well. It was very nice. DocRaptor is a fantastic service that I recommend to anybody. And so that would generate a PDF, send it out to all of those people involved, and would include additional data such as like this is your remaining budget and stuff like that. But it was a very informative report that was meant to let people know how the campaigns are doing, be a reference to what was there before or what happened, and also it allowed us to have really good conversations about things that might need to be changed. I'll get a little bit more into that in a moment, because all of the data that you see on that report is also available in the campaign view. A couple of other sections here real quick. We have our comment section. So I might be adding, or somebody might be adding comments in here. Very simple form, but it's kind of nice because this is using action text with Rails, and it allows for very versatile text input, and I believe it supports drag and drop. It's just all very, very, very good. And then finally, in the settings, I believe that you've seen this before, but this is how those campaigns are set up. Talked about the approval needed, and so okay, so that's what that looks like. All right, so I'm going to skip the campaign bundles section for now. I'd like to dig into this campaign section. So if I click on this, you'll see all of the campaigns that are running for daily throughout all the history. So here you can see these campaigns. They had much better names before I renamed them. But over here, you'll see these two bars. The top bar is the progress by date. So for example, if it's a 30-day campaign, you'll see this move 1/30th every single day. Down below this green bar is the budget. So if their budget was, let's say, $1,000, it's going to move $1,000 divided by 30 every single day, or at least that's the goal. What the number really was is how much they actually spent. So it was kind of a game of making sure that this top bar and the bottom bar were right in line. It's like a race, but you want them to have a photo finish. And so down below, you'll also see like there are indicators that maybe it's running too fast or too slow, or there might be other indicators that are important to know. So that's what that looks like. And if I dig into a campaign, so it won't show anything right now because the date range doesn't actually match the date range of the campaign. So I'm going to click this button right here, and it'll automatically update my date range to match the campaign. Again, normally you would see a dashboard here. It doesn't exist right now. So I'm going to move on. Under the daily stats, we show all of the results based on a day-by-day basis. So you can see for them, they were spending about $32 a day, getting about 16,000 impressions a day. And then we show the number of clicks, the average click rate for that day, the CPM, which is a cost per 1,000 impressions. It can average. So when, for example, if they're buying a campaign that crosses multiple different audiences and regions, that would lead to different CPMs. So this is just the average CPM based on where that money actually went. And then finally, this last number is the cost per click. That cost per click is determined based on essentially how much they spent versus how many clicks they had. This is a really good solid metric that we use to communicate the value of our platform. Cost per click is a very simple idea to reason about. I'm willing to pay a certain amount. All right, my daughter just brought me a package, so yeah. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and move on here. I will cover this right section in a moment. Under the creatives, every single campaign could run one-to-many creatives. And our goal was to constantly have at least 3 running. As long as we had 3 running, we knew that it could, we knew that we would be able to do slight variations and understand like, maybe this works better, maybe this doesn't work better. And you can see in here, overall the results are, this one right here was the best performing campaign. This is the least performing campaign. Actually, this was the least performing campaign. And at the end of the day, advertisers are very interested in this because you can see like there is about a 15% increase, or a 15% increase in cost just between these 2 ad creatives. So it's really important for advertisers to be able to know, and our platform really made that possible. The more traffic that they got, the automatically traffic would be diverted more to those creatives that were more performant. Under properties, here you're going to see a bunch of websites that used to be part of CodeFund. I don't mind sharing this because I think it's pretty public knowledge that, when you visit any of these websites, you're going to see ads. So as an advertiser, I knew exactly which properties my ad was appearing on, how well each one performed, and what I was paying to each one. So it was really, really good information. And I can also click on that and view the website and actually view what the ad might look like on each one of those websites. Finally, under the countries, we have a breakdown of the geographical, basically countries that we're showing ads in. You can see that some countries are a lot of traffic at a very, very inexpensive cost, ended up being about 15 cents cost per click. US was a bit more. So you can see it really is a full breakdown. And the reason I showed this is because advertisers want to know, like how can they get better results out of the same ad spend, or how can they find that sweet spot where they can turn up the volume on their ad spend and really be able to get the results that they're after. So our thoughts were to just provide as much information as we could ethically to our advertisers so that they could really make solid decisions and we could help them and guide them into those decisions. This is a very different approach than a lot of other companies where they really kind of hide everything. Our goal was to be as open and basically be a partner with all of our advertisers. And then of course we have the comment section, which I'll just skip, and then we have the settings. So when we configure a campaign, this is what the full campaign configuration looks like. So the first thing is I would choose the advertiser. I would choose a status, and that status could be accepted, meaning when they're accepted, that means they've locked in the inventory for that campaign. I'll get a little bit more into that shortly. Active means that the campaign is actually displaying ads. Pause means that it's active, but it's just on hold for a moment, or at least it's authorized to go active. And then pending means that it's not quite authorized to go active yet, but it is it's ready for being prepared. Then we have our name, the date range, the audiences could be whatever audience. So remember we have those 10 different audiences. So let's say they want to target DevOps and CSS and design. I could select those 2, and what it would do down below, I'll get there in a moment. Finally, on the regions, on the regions here, you see we have all of these different regions. So let's say they just wanted to target North America, US, and Canada only. They could do that. Now our URL builder, this is the URL that would be used anytime somebody would click on that ad. So we wanted to provide a way for them to have dynamic information passed along. So all of these variables down below are variables that they can add to their URL. So for example, if they wanted to say UTM campaign, and they could just give it campaign ID. And then they could see in their Google Analytics or wherever they're doing their analytics, they would know that this campaign was from, or this visitor was from this campaign. And so on and so forth, a whole bunch of data that we provide. If I move down here, I'll show you, we have 2 flags here. Is this a paid fallback campaign? So the paid fallback campaign and a fallback campaign are essentially tiers of think of it like an if, else statement or something like that. Or yeah, just basically a flow. So the first flow would be, is there is there a campaign that has a budget that matches this location and this audience? If there is, we would randomly choose an advertiser out of that pool and display the ad. If there was no paid ad available, then the next step we would do is say, is there a paid fallback ad? A paid fallback ad is something that we just did for a few months. It was to help us out because we just needed to, obviously we shut down, so we didn't do the best in that area, but we needed more revenue. We needed to show more revenue. And so a paid fallback was essentially a CodeFund sponsor that we would show, that would sponsor, and then we would get paid as CodeFund, and it would just be the default fallback ad for everybody. But we earmarked about 15% of the traffic to go to our fallback campaigns. Now the fallback campaigns are those that are established to to show community things. Like, for example, we had some creatives that, or some campaigns that ran for different causes. We had campaigns that, for CodeFund or maybe the podcast network, stuff like that is where we fit in those. And so that would be a fallback campaign. It was not a paid campaign, so the publisher wasn't paid, but they did have the option to opt in or opt out of those. Down here, you'll see all the different creatives that we have, so you can run all these different creatives that you want at the same time, and it would just, as you go through and determine which ones are performant and none, I would just come in here, or they would come in here and remove the ones that are less performant. Down below, we have our geo-targeting. This is every single country and every single subregion, and what happens is if I choose a section, so remember I chose regions up here, it just chose North America and Canada, or US and Canada. But if I come in and I say, well, I also want, let's just do Central and South America. And if I scroll down, you'll see now it shows all of South America and all of Central America. And some advertisers might say, well, this is what I want, except I really don't want to have Uruguay and Colombia in there. So we could go in and remove them. That wasn't an issue. Finally, we did have the ability to target specific states and regions. That was not very used, but we did use that several times in, local conferences. We had a campaign that just ran in London. We had one campaign that just ran in the Southeast states in the United States. So that's where that would come into play. Additional targeting down here. The targeting keywords does come from the audiences that were selected above. So if I come back up here again and I choose one more, and let's say miscellaneous, then I come down here, you'll see that this list grew and included all of the keywords for miscellaneous. There are negative keywords as well. So let's say, for example, I want to run an ad campaign on everything, but I definitely don't want to run one on Angular. I could do that. However, since we switched to our audiences model, this really hasn't been used since. We do have prohibited properties, so some advertisers do not want their ad to appear on specific websites for some reason or another. Then we would add them in here, and then those advertisers would no longer show ads on those websites. And then, as I mentioned before, we have assigned properties. Now, if an advertiser wanted to specifically target like 2 or 3 properties, or maybe one property, we would be able to do that, and I could just set that as a fixed target. And then down below, we have a couple of different pricing models. This is the old pricing model where we had, basically set a CPM, a total budget cap, a daily budget cap, and an hourly budget cap. So in this scenario, they had a $4 CPM. They were for $1,000. They didn't want to spend more than $32 a day, and I broke that down to about, to make that run about 18 hours, 20 hours, we had about $1.79 per hour. We do have a fixed CPM, and that fixed CPM is often used when we assign properties. So for example, if somebody wanted to target a very specific property, we could do that, but we'd say, you know what, we're not going to allow, it's going to be a fixed price for the traffic. Now, if that's not set, what it does is it calculates it will calculate the price based on the region, and we have, you can look it up in our code and how all that works, but essentially it says, depending on depending on the region, it's going to have a different price, and also depending on the property. And so all of them have a multiplier, and it will modify the price. But this price right here is the base, or basically the top line price. So for example, if I have that $10, that'll be the highest price that you pay on any ad display, and then after that, it would just be a divided by whatever that multiplier is. So that is how you configure a campaign. There are other ways to configure campaigns, and I'm going to jump in here now. The campaign bundler, I think, is one of those really unique tools that we built, primarily built by Nate Hopkins, who's a phenomenal developer and also the creator of Stimulus Reflex. Stimulus Reflex is essentially the same thing for Rails as Live View is for Phoenix, with some variations, but it really provides a way to seamlessly communicate with the back end and the front end with very, very minimal JavaScript, or sometimes no JavaScript. We decided as a company I think it was about 10 months ago, to switch our ads to be more to introduce inventory tracking. We found that one of the problems that I ran into is that I would oversell or undersell inventory because I didn't really know how much we would have. Publishers kind of come and go, and the amount of inventory we have varies. But it was really hard for me to determine exactly how much we had to sell and then when we would sell out. And this led to some pretty bad situations with advertisers where maybe they had budgeted more than we could provide, and when that happens, they're kind of stuck holding the bag, saying, well, I had all this budget but I didn't use it, now what happens? So it's just something that you don't want to do. So we introduced this inventory tracking, and this tool, what it does, will actually predict the results of a campaign based on the criteria that we put in. I'll walk you through this, and I hope everything works because it is running on my local machine, but I will walk you through this. So I'm just going to say example. So now I could say, well, I just want this campaign to run, let's say, between August through October. And if I hit apply there, now I can choose the regions, and maybe I just want to target North America. Perhaps I want to target Europe, and let's do, well, that's probably good. So over here on the left, you see this little dancing dot worm. And what it's doing is it's performing that back end process where it's determining what the expected inventory is for this date range. Now over here you'll see this shows total inventory by day, and it breaks it down by country. So in this scenario, we would have 285,000 impressions per day that we could sell or have been sold, but this is the total. And then it breaks it down by country and by the average click rate historically for those countries. Now that's on a 90-day a rolling average. So once we see that, I can come down and you can see we have daily impressions by audience as well. So it'll break down based on the target where all of those impressions really fall on an audience level. And now is when the fun starts. So if I hit add campaign and come down here, you can see this is my first one, and I might give it a URL. And if I come down below, I can say, all right, well, which audiences do I want to target? And this one I might just say, I just want JavaScript in front end on this one. Great. So what it's doing now is it's saying, okay, it's taking all of that data and now it's breaking it down and saying what's available in this specific audience. So over here, you'll see that it has 165,000 impressions per day in that audience. It'll break it down by the 2 different regions that I have selected. It'll show the price. So this is our pricing for those audiences, and this is that base. So if I wanted to give them a discount, I could. I just do, let's say, a 5% discount. Oh, that's not a 5% discount. That's a 5% discount. Okay, so now you'll see that this is a 5% discount. Over here, if I scroll down, it'll show the inventory by region and audience and really break it down to like what we expect will happen. So I got to set let's say a daily budget. So let's say I want to spend $50 a day. Okay, now we're showing some good data. Over here on the right, it'll show how that spend would break down. So you can see the majority of that spend would go to North America, Canada, and US. It would show the total impressions, average daily impressions, average click rate that we expect to see, the average daily budget, the total budget that would likely go to that combination of target, our estimated total impressions for that combination, estimated total clicks, and the estimated CPC. So right out of the gate, I kind of know like, oh, okay, it looks like it's going to average out to be about 275 or so per click. I realize my wife's vacuuming upstairs, so this is just the nature of doing business at home. So I apologize, but hopefully you can hear just fine.